My story begins when I was just 19, working at a photo studio located inside a major retailer. The studio was positioned in the basement, tucked away in a remote corner that most shoppers never found. Usually it was a one-person operation, especially for the closing shift I was covering, 3:00 p.m. to 7 p.m. on this particular afternoon. My boss and a coworker were finishing up, scheduled to depart at 3:30 p.m. I got logged into the computer, and my manager updated me. One family was already in the camera room, running slightly behind. She also prompted me to attempt a pull-in. For those unfamiliar, that's when we try to convince random store customers to schedule an impromptu photo session, offering 2 complimentary prints as a draw. It's part of the job to generate additional sales. While we chatted, I noticed a man wandering near the studio. He was dressed in clothing that strongly resembled a prison uniform. It was clearly a cheap costume, but what made him stand out was the location. Why was a person in a Halloween getup, and it wasn't even Halloween weekend yet, hanging out in the most forgotten part of the store's basement? He didn't have an appointment. He was simply lurking. My boss, not having observed his peculiar demeanor, approached him and offered a photo shoot. I was preoccupied checking in the next scheduled family, making sure their details were correct. My manager and coworker left right on schedule, leaving me completely alone. Just as I was about to head into the camera room to prepare for the session, my boss quickly passed by, whispering that the guy in the prison outfit had accepted the offer. He wanted to come in after the current appointment. So I had a normal session first, followed by this strange individual. The family session went off without a hitch, but while I was actively taking their photos, I caught sight of the costumed man through the doorway. He was seated on the waiting bench directly outside the studio door. That bench is primarily for parents watching their children, but I shrugged it off. He wouldn't know the protocol. Still, it felt unsettling that he chose to wait there. Right before my boss left for the day, she quickly poked her head back into the room. She pulled me aside and murmured, "I'm getting seriously bad vibes from the man you're about to photograph. I've asked Andrew, the main store manager, to come down and check on you to ensure everything's fine." After I finished capturing the family's pictures, I needed a few minutes to edit them on the computer. The family moved to a different waiting area. I stayed inside the camera room at the editing station. That's when the man started walking right in, demanding to know when it was his turn. And that's when I saw it. His crowbar was undeniably real. It was not a fake prop. I was instantly terrified, particularly because he kept swinging it carelessly while speaking. I told him I'd be ready shortly and politely requested he wait outside the camera room. While he was out there, I watched him from the computer screen. He was behaving erratically. He kept doubling over, his head dropping as if he were suddenly falling asleep, only to jerk back awake and start shifting his weight again. This bizarre cycle repeated itself. It was clear to me that something was profoundly wrong with him. Was I safe? At this point, it was just me, the man in the prisoner costume, and a mother with her 2 young children in the entire studio area. I completely stopped focusing on the family's pictures, now directing all my attention to him. The mother and her children were also noticeably uncomfortable, constantly glancing at him with mounting nervousness. He repeatedly ignored my request to remain outside, barging back into the studio multiple times, interrupting my work, and asking the same question. No matter how many times I calmly told him to please wait outside, he refused to listen or respect my answer. Finally, I completed the edits and brought the family out to the checkout area, my hands practically trembling. The mom quickly sensed the extreme discomfort I was feeling. As I was trying to complete her transaction, the man kept hovering, leaning over the register to try and peer at her photos. The mother had enough. She confronted him loudly, asking, "Can I help you?" Clearly annoyed, she was telling him to back off. He simply started rambling again about getting his pictures taken. The mom then leaned closer to me and whispered, "Are you genuinely okay?" I pulled out their appointment sheet and began saying something about the photo price, attempting to maintain a facade of normalcy. But as I spoke, I frantically scribbled a note on the paper for her eyes only. I wrote that he wouldn't leave me alone, and that my manager was supposed to be coming down to assist me. Note that Andrew still hadn't appeared, despite it being over an hour and a half since my boss had clocked out. The mom read my message, still deeply worried, but we proceeded to finalize her payment. She desperately needed to get her children out of there, and I didn't blame her. I attempted to process her card on our in-studio reader, and by some unbelievable stroke of luck, or perhaps divine intervention, the card wouldn't process. It kept declining or failing to read correctly. Ordinarily, this would be frustrating, but in that moment I was profoundly relieved. Our policy mandated that a failed local transaction required printing a new receipt and physically walking the customer up to a standard checkout register in the main store. I instantly saw this as my only way out. I grabbed the new receipt and told the mom we had to go upstairs to complete the purchase. I escorted her and her kids to the salon area registers on the same floor but far away from the studio. The second I was out of that man's field of vision and a safe distance from the basement studio, I broke down. I started sobbing right there and frantically recounted the entire incident to one of the salon employees. The words spilled out of me. I couldn't contain my fear any longer. He immediately called the manager. They offered me the safety of the break room, but I'd have to walk past the man again. I chose safety over professionalism. I opted to remain in the salon. The mother, who had stood by me the entire time, approached me afterwards and said something that meant everything. She declared there was no way she was leaving me alone with that guy, regardless of the situation. That reassurance made me feel less isolated. Now all I could do was wait while the managers handled him and forced him to leave. The manager and another employee went down to confront the costumed man. After what felt like an eternity, about 15 minutes with no word, I cautiously peeked around the corner. He was gone. A massive wave of relief washed over me. Thankfully, I had no further photo appointments scheduled, yet I still had to return to that studio and sit alone for the rest of my shift until closing time. The fear that he might return was constant. It took a long time to feel normal again. Even today, I get profoundly uneasy when I have to work alone in the studio, but the most chilling part of the entire ordeal is what happened next, what I didn't witness. Approximately 45 minutes later, the main store manager came to check on me. I asked him how the confrontation went. What he told me made my blood run ice cold. He said that when they tried to make him exit the building, the man became absolutely enraged. He made a terrifying scene, violently throwing his real metal crowbar down near the manager. It was a terrifying near miss. They were forced to call mall security, and it took the combined effort of all of them to finally physically remove him from the premises. What kind of person acts like that over a free photo session? The next story concerns a stay at the Montauk Manor in Montauk, New York. My boyfriend and I booked 2 nights there, completely unaware that it was reputed to be haunted. We simply sought a nice weekend getaway. The first night seemed ordinary. We checked in and were given a room on the 3rd floor. However, the room had a deeply unpleasant odor, like an ancient, malfunctioning refrigerator. We promptly returned to the front desk and requested a change. They graciously moved us to room 2011 on the 2nd floor instead. This new room was a vast improvement, significantly larger, and it boasted a massive outdoor balcony. On the deck, there was a small gargoyle statue facing away from the room, which we thought was a quirky decoration. The first night in 2011 was perfectly uneventful. We were tired from the trip and slept soundly through the night. But the second night was when the strange events began. Around 2 a.m., my boyfriend woke up, claiming he heard the elevator doors opening down the hall. This was odd because the hotel felt deserted. We had barely seen any other guests. Then, as he lay there listening, he witnessed a pillow on a chair across the room suddenly fall off. It didn't slide, it just dropped. I tried to reassure him, suggesting it was nothing. Maybe the pillow had been unbalanced, or perhaps it had fallen earlier. "Relax," I said. "It's likely nothing. It's Friday night. Maybe someone checked in late." I was attempting to sound logical and dismissive, but deep down I was just as frightened. Despite my calm facade, I made sure to leave all the lights on. My boyfriend remained agitated, and neither of us could fall back asleep. We lay there just talking about random things to distract ourselves until about 4 a.m. I remember thinking that the truly terrifying paranormal activity usually peaks around 3 a.m. Since we were past that time. Surely we were safe now. So I finally got up, turned off the lights, and we both drifted off. Maybe 20 minutes later, I suddenly awoke. My heart was pounding, and I was in an absolute state of panic. I can't even pinpoint what exactly woke me, but something definitely did. I immediately called out my boyfriend's name. He answered instantly, and I could hear the fear in his voice. Then, an irresistible urge took hold of me. Without a second thought, I literally leaped out of bed and ran straight out of the room and into the hallway. I grabbed nothing. I didn't stop to think. I simply bolted. When I returned, we exchanged a look. We both knew we had to leave right then. We frantically started shoving our belongings into our bags. For some strange reason, as I began to pack, the sheer absurdity of the situation hit me. and I couldn't stop nervously giggling. I think it was pure adrenaline and anxiety, but my laughter only escalated his panic. He kept looking at me like, "How are you laughing right now?" He rushed me, urging, "Hurry up, let's just go." We were simply throwing everything in, no folding, no organizing. When we finally made it to the hallway with all our luggage, we pressed the elevator button. The wait was excruciatingly long. It felt like 5 minutes, maybe more. Every second dragged. We kept looking at each other. Would this thing ever arrive? It was the middle of the night, and we were desperate to escape. Finally, the elevator arrived and we descended to the front desk. The clerk on duty saw us, fully packed, checking out at 4:30 in the morning, and started laughing. He cracked a joke about our early departure, finding the whole thing amusing. We didn't offer an explanation. We just wanted to settle up and get out. It's been 3 days since that night, and I am still reeling. Tried various coping mechanisms. I went to church, and I've attempted white light meditation. But I still don't feel right. I'm still profoundly uneasy and scared. Is there anything else I can do to recover my peace of mind? And the constant worry remains, what is the possibility that I actually carried something, a spirit or entity, home with me from that place? For as long as I can recall, I've been exposed to paranormal phenomena. My earliest recollection is from when I was about 7 or 8 years old. It was the same day our family dog passed away. I didn't fully grasp the concept of death yet. Years later, my parents told me that I spent the whole afternoon running around the backyard, laughing and playing fetch as usual. When they asked what I was doing, I said I was playing with our dog. They watched me throw a ball and run after something they couldn't see. At the time, they assumed I was just finding my own way to cope with the loss. But looking back now, I seriously doubt that. After that day, things became much stranger and more disturbing. Every Halloween, our family had a tradition of visiting the cemetery to take pictures in our costumes. But when we'd review the photos, there was always something unusual in them. A strange, non-human-looking entity would be hovering directly above only my head in every single photograph. It was never above my siblings. Another deeply unsettling memory involves seeing my father outside my bedroom window late one night, around 3 or 4 a.m. The world felt incredibly silent, as if time had paused. I looked out and saw him just standing there. He gave a slow wave, then walked away and vanished from view. Petrified, I immediately ran to my parents' room to check on him. He was fast asleep in bed, completely confused by my presence. That night still gives me chills. What was that figure? I also vividly remember hearing laughter coming from inside my closet many times. It was a chilling, quiet, giggling sound, yet there was never a person or object there. For years, I was visited by a spectral figure I named the Top Hat Man. He would stand in the corner of my room and watch me sleep. He wore an antique-looking top hat, and he appeared to be smoking. I could see the motion of his hand lifting to his mouth as if taking a drag, but there was never any actual smoke. He was there almost every single night, always in that same corner, just staring. Even after I moved to my mother's home, the paranormal activity followed. One evening, I saw a tall, hunched-over woman in the corner of my new bedroom. She was so tall that she had to severely bend her back and neck just to fit under the ceiling. An incredibly disturbing, unnatural posture. She seemed to be yelling at another figure next to her, who I believed was her daughter based on their interaction. The daughter figure was always facing away, so I never saw her face. The strangest element of all these encounters is that every single figure was completely mute. I could see their mouths moving as if they were speaking or shouting, but not a single sound ever reached my ears. Around the start of the year 2020, I began experiencing a new phenomenon. I would wake up in the middle of the night or early morning and see faces hovering directly above me. They would just be there, gazing down at me for a few seconds before disappearing. My mother is the only other family member who has had similar paranormal experiences. She went through comparable events when she was younger. Consequently, she's one of the few people who genuinely believes me and understands what I am enduring. Because of her own traumatic history, she is extremely strict about certain boundaries. She has explicitly forbidden me from experimenting with any kind of Ouija board or other purported methods of communicating with spirits. She's also prohibited me from visiting any locations renowned for being haunted, like old abandoned sites. She is absolutely serious about these rules and becomes genuinely upset if I even joke about violating them. Her trauma became my lifelong warning. I think her experience has truly scarred her, and she's terrified I'll make things worse or invite something darker into my life. If these stories gave you chills, do me a favor and like this video and subscribe to the Winds of Thought channel for more unsettling narratives.